I'm just asked to give a short presentation of Ivan Illich's work done in Tools for Conviviality, which is his book from 1973. So, where Illich makes a general thesis about technology and society. So, I suppose Illich's critique of modern industrial society is how it tends to become what he calls counterproductive after a certain intensity. The more we put into institutions and tools, the less they tend to give what they actually promise, and they end up working against what they were meant to provide. So this is it's just a starting point for him. And the question is kind of how to criticize this tendency of current technocracy and counterproductivity without like refusing all of technology and ending up in like primitivism. And Illich's it's kind of being or saying if industrial productivity is the sole criteria we use for whether a tool should be applied or not, then we get very one-dimensional analysis of whether we should use a tool or not. It's just if it's productive, industrial productive, then we apply it, and if it's less industrial productive, then we discard it and view it as mere romanticism or elitist utopianism or something like that. So Illich proposes this other dimension, conviviality, then as another way of evaluating a tool. And conviviality is then focusing on whether it creates happiness in a different way than only industrial productivity. It looks to whether human abilities are being able to flourish and to express. People are able to express their meaning through tools and shape their environment in the degree they find meaningful. So Illich in Tools for Conviviality lists up 5 balances that he thinks is essential for evaluating our relation to tools. He points to 5 natural scales which all have to be balanced in order for a tool to be convivial, because when it drops below a certain level of what you call conviviality, it turns out to work against its own principle and be counterproductive. The first of this natural scales are connected to nature, to biological degradation, where we would find the environmental questions or pollution and these things, which we know quite well from different parts. And the second balance is about natural competences, whether a tool enables man's natural competences to be expressed or whether it suppresses it. So, for example, man's ability to walk as something you are born with is crippled the more we have to buy a bus ticket or a train ticket or demand to be transported. So there's like this balance between, on the one side, developing abilities we are born with, and on the other side, needing to have pre-packaged, industrialized packages on the other side. So this is also connected to health, for example. Man's ability to heal on the one side can turn into a need for healthcare on the other side. And the one is an ability to be cultivated, and the other is commodity to be bought. So this transition is a transition also from, or balance. This balance points to this transition from nouns, verbs into nouns. If you that it has a tendency to be that things people can do for themselves, they have to buy in this commodification. And Illich calls this radical monopoly, this industrial, how we become dependent on industrial packaged commodities. And the third balance is concerned with overprogramming, where people between what people can learn on their own compared to what they have to be taught from others. And the more technology is, the more complex and advanced that technology is, the more people demand or need to be taught, and the ability to learn on their own is suppressed. A fourth balance is concerned with social polarization, where this leads to a gap between people in both in a social respect. And the fifth balance is concerned with obsolescence, or how would you say it?
Obsolescence.
Obsolescence. Okay, it's a difficult word for me. Where the more when tools are being defined by professionals and technocrats. They are. It's often defined in such a way, in such a speed, that we cannot anymore make small scale innovations in how we want, because we have to follow the tempo that innovations are made by the professionals. So these 5 balances, and Illich's point is that all of these has to be balanced in order to gain conviviality. And focusing just on one of these would then create an unbalanced and counterproductive effects. So, for example, if one could find solutions in concerning nature that would solve the problems regarding the biological degradation, but it would easily prop up the imbalance in other places, and then you still have the fundamental problem of counterproductivity. So taking if we take the car as an example of just very fast of these areas, the pollution effect of cars is one thing. It pollutes the environment, but concerning radical monopoly, the second balance, it would. The more you depend on cars in order to get anywhere, the more you cripple your innate ability to walk and get along without buying a car or buying a passenger mile. And in order to be able to drive a car, you have to be taught how to drive the car, because it's very strict license requirements for doing it. You can't just learn it on your own. You have to be someone have to teach you in a very different way than with a bicycle, for example. It's good to be having a teacher maybe, but it's not required in the same way. And the faster, concerned now with the fourth balance, the faster someone potentially can travel, the slower in comparison the one that is just having their own feet will travel. So walking would be will be in comparison much slower than someone being able to travel in 200 kilometers an hour. So this will create this social polarization. And fifth, it would not be possible to innovate in concerning cars in the speed we want to, if since they are so specialized and advanced, you have to operate along the lines of the ones having made them. These balances are made as are proposed like a framework for people to evaluate their own relation to their tools. They're not supposed to point at how exactly how should the tools look like. You can't define that on beforehand. Is kind of Illich's point, I would say, because each situation is different. And this is, I know he's critiqued of this. He's criticized of this sometimes, but this is also, I believe, is a big advantage of Illich's analysis, that it gives this general framework for how evaluating it, and how seeing how technology lies in the background all the time of our lives, and by and it's also you cannot define on beforehand what will be a convivial tool, and you cannot necessarily say that a tool would be used in a convivial fashion or not, because a tool can also be used in an unconvivial fashion. And Illich would also say that it's the overall level of conviviality in a society that would count. In which degree does people have the opportunity to express their meaning through their tools? And the more specialized and advanced a tool is, the less diverse purposes can it be used for. So man has to use the tool in a specific way, rather than being able to express his abilities in all different kinds of ways. And then to the question, what is alternative, what is appropriate technology? I think Illich is very important insight here, is that it has to do with limits, or with natural scales, and these are balances. All of this that I pointed out that Illich presents, they are balances. It's not like either or, and it's finding the way in the middle between that is important. But the importance of setting of self-limitations on industrial productivity in order to gain conviviality, that's kind of that's very important, and by creating this limits, it's also possible to, it's also created a creative space by setting limits that you will not have in the same way if you would just let the productivity grow the whole way. Yeah.